What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show with me, Sean Sheehan, here on SureDog.com. And today I am looking ahead to PFL MENA. It is the first PFL MENA card of 2025 after a great year last year. They're back on May 9th over in the Onyx Arena in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. And there's a lot of new faces this year, some of the old faces from last year again. But I've had a lot of tape study to do, let's put it that way, with some of the new guys coming through. And I'll be honest, I think there's some very, very good talent. This time last year, obviously, we started it off. And I watched a lot of the tape on the guys that had been selected. And I was very, very impressed. And I think that, that first impression turned out to be correct. I think there was a lot of good performances last year. I think there was a lot of good fights. And a lot of... guys like, Mohsen Mohammadseifi, as we see here in the main event, who emerged from it as I was going to say potential stars, but as stars, as guys who can go on and enter this again and maybe win it again and go on and maybe go to the global tournament as well. I've seen a lot of people talking about the PFL MENA, PFL Europe, PFL Africa, and etc. Part of the PFL over the last while, and some people arguing good, some people arguing bad, but I do think the good argument is winning out. I think what they're doing in these regions is not getting every piece of talent, how could you, but getting a lot of good talent, showcasing it in the region, giving these people fights in a big Friday or Saturday night arena, with the television cameras, with the bright lights and all of that, getting them that experience, and not just showcasing them in your promotion, but possibly showcasing them in the the top level of your promotion in the future, while also putting them on a path that is better than, so you look at the UFC. They're signing young. Look at, say, like Ahmed Sisy here, 6-1. He'd be straight in the UFC fighting in the lower level of the UFC. Like in the lower level of the UFC, you might find someone who's coming off the Contender Series, and maybe they shouldn't be in the UFC, or maybe not that good. Or you could meet Reda or something like that. You never know. You never know who you're going to meet. Whereas in PFL MENA, PFL Europe, we see it's more similar to sort of Cage Warriors. Eddine does a great job, but there's good matchmaking in this. Dan Hardy, and I know the guys over in MENA as well, do a good job. You're fighting guys at your level. You're climbing to another level to get to the top of PFL Europe, PFL MENA. And when you get there, as we see, some guys are trying to do it again, but it makes you more of an asset to go forward in terms of how you will do, in my opinion, in a global tournament, than if you hadn't gone through that, or if you were just plucked, from the regional scene or whatever it might be. No, it might be different. Let's say if you're signed from the UFC, or let's say you're Paul Hughes, who was, 14, 15 fights or whatever it was when he came in. A little bit different, obviously. But I think it's a real good service for themselves to supply them with fighters. Now, there's, I think, a little bit of the criticism is maybe not all the fighters who have won have gone on and been in the world tournament. I think that's a best case scenario. Is it always going to be possible when you have PFL Europe, PFL MENA, PFL Africa, they're on about doing one in Australia? It's not, that's not going to happen. So they're going to pick and choose. But you look at a guy, let's say, like Mohsen Mohammadseifi, I would have liked to have seen him in it this year. But if he wins it again this year, I think he'll definitely be in the global tournament next year. And, you've created a guy who's a 2-time, champion, basically, gone in there. So that's the best case scenario for PFL MENA or PFL Europe or whatever other regional promotion they have. And the best case scenario for for Don Davis and Peter Murray and all at the global stage. So, do you know what I think they need to do as well? And this is something that obviously can change. I do think they need to back those guys, right? And what I mean by that is, every year there should be one of them in there. in almost every tournament, whether it's the MENA champion, whether it's the PFL champion. Again, it'd be very tough to put them all in there every year. But I would love to see at least one in every weight class every year, either a PFL MENA champion, PFL Europe champion, coming up in a PFL, Africa champion, whatever it might be over the years. And that's something I'm sure that I don't think it'd be that hard to do, and it'd be a clear, proven pathway to the very, very top of the PFL. So let's see how that goes. But again, I've very, very little complaints about PFL Europe, PFL MENA so far. I think they've been really good. So let's get into some of the fighters, and let's have a little chat about them. Let's start at the main event. Mohammed Sisy against Mohsen Mohammadseifi. Obviously, if you tuned in last year, you know a lot about Mohammed Sisy. He went down and he won the championship last year, beating George Ade in the final. I fingered the Golden Boy to be a real good prospect around this time last year. He went in and he beat Josh Togo and knocked him out, beat Souhil Tahri, who we'll be talking about later on, who's a good fighter as well. And then he came in against George Ade, and I was thinking in that fight, that's going to be a tough fight if you can't get into the ground. 5 rounds as well for a guy so young in his career. I know Mohammed Sissy's a touch older at 35, but what he did to George Ade in that fight was phenomenal. Ade is obviously a very good striker. He didn't just beat him on the ground. A lot of that fight was striking, and Mohammed Sisy, or Mohsen Mohammadseifi, was able to beat him there as well. It was a really, really, really top performance. A really top performance. And, he's a guy now who's at the very top of this promotion. And he's fighting a guy in Ahmed Al-Sisi, who has yet to fight in the PFL. He was fighting in the Middle East Championship for his last few fights. Fought a couple of fights as an amateur as well, dating back to 2017. But, he's been kind of fighting more as a pro only in the last 2 to 3 years. And he's had all but one of those 8 fights. He won no contest as well in the last 2.5, 3 years. And he's a very, very interesting guy watching him. There's the whole load of tape out there on him, but from what I found, he has this very kind of odd, wide open stance. And it does 2 things for him. It allows him to throw that right hand, and it allows him to throw it very, very often. But it also allows him to take shots up through the middle, which, if we're to go on what Mohammadseifi did last time, is going to be an issue. But what else he has that sets him apart from a lot of guys is his speed. He is so fast. Like, that right hand that he throws is really, really, really fast. He has good takedowns as well. Generally, he has very unorthodox trips. I was watching one of his fights. He got someone against the cage, and usually, you trip a guy by, let's say you're on the right hand side, you trip under the behind the knee of the left leg of your opponent. He picked up the right leg of his opponent, lifted up, tripped the other leg, and brought him down. Brilliant stuff. Like, something I don't think I've ever seen in MMA, in like going from a standing position. If you had ended up in that position, maybe, but he put that position there himself and got a takedown from it. Very, very good. Very, very good. And he's the guy I wrote in my notes here. He does what it takes. In any position, he will go to what he views as the best way to get the fight to the ground. Very, very good. No submission yet in his career, but again, he's only 7-8 fights deep in his career. But he had a full-on rear naked choke on one of his fights. It looked like he was going to get it. Very, very athletic on the ground, very good at holding position. The one thing I would say about him on the ground, maybe needs a touch more ground and pound. But as I said, very athletic on the ground. Then Mohammadseifi, the other side of it, I in my notes, I always have power puncher. Read about Mohammadseifi, but I think we have to adjust that and adjust those notes based on the George Ade fight last time out. He has he came into last year with a real good knockout record, and he got 2 decisions. What did he? He had 4 knockouts and 1 decision. Now he's 4 knockouts and 3 decisions. Sorry, 3-1. And I think that's made him a better fighter, funnily enough. You know, at 35 to only have 9 fights in your career is not very many. But if you see the clear improvements that he made, I wouldn't have that much of... I'd usually worry about it, but I wouldn't have that much of a worry about it. And another thing about him as well, if a guy was losing speed, I would be worried. Now, against Sisy, I think it might be a big of an issue, but we'll get to that in a second. I think he gained speed. He maybe lost a bit of size, which is probably smart, but he carries savage muscle. Savage muscle. You know, I've said a few times, he reminds me of a young Hector Lombard. Kicks a lot, varied wheel kicks. He, again, added in more wrestling over the years, not necessarily so much in the last fight, but he's a very, very good wrestler. And that outstriking of George Ed was a real banner for him to hang. I think it's going to be real tough for LCC to fight against Mohammadseifi if Mohammadseifi is as good as he was against George Ed, because, you know, that open stance is going to be ate up by the jab of Mohammadseifi and the right hand coming behind it. LCC obviously a very, very good wrestler, as I mentioned, but is he going to be a good enough wrestler to take down Mohsen Mohammadseifi, who is a big man, as wide as a fire hydrant, built like a fire hydrant. It's going to be tough. The one thing I would say, look, the pick is definitely going to be a Mohsen Mohammadseifi without a shadow of a doubt. But the one thing I would say is Ahmed Sisy has a lot of talent. Can he be the next guy? You know, there's a reason they're matchmaking this fight, you know. And I wonder what the reason is. The one thing I would say, and I give him great credit for this, I have yet to see a squash match. Let's put it that way. Now, some people have won very quickly and stuff like that, but this again is not a squash match on paper. And you think it would be hard not to get Mohammadseifi one of them based on what he did last time. But I think LCC will have a say in this. I think he will. If he can get a takedown against Mohammadseifi, all bets are off then, but I still fancy Mohammadseifi to come through it. I think it's going to be hard for him to take Mohammadseifi down, and I think he'll end up winning it. The next fight I want to talk about is, again, an interesting one between Izzeddine Derbani and Yanis Ghemmouri. Obviously, you know, the name Yanis Ghemmouri is probably known a little bit better now than Derbani. You know, Ghemmouri is 12-3. Obviously fighting out of Leon, fought in the UFC a couple of times. Was supposed to fight my guy Caelan Loughran. That didn't end up happening. Lost to Peyton Talbot, you know, famously in that big knockout, and William Gomis before that. But was on a great run, you know, coming in to the UFC, and you know, he had won a lot of fights in UAE Warriors, and Brave beat Rashid Alhaz, who obviously has fought a good bit on PFL MENA, and you know, he is an interesting sort of fighter. We'll get more to him in a second. He's 30 years of age, which is a good age. Interesting for Derbani, he's actually 37, fighting out of Man Jordan, you know, Palestinian samurais he calls himself, and wears the shorts and everything like that. These former fights. This is his PFL debut. Fought a load in Brave over the years, and UAE Warriors as well. Been in there with some very, very good guys: Dean Garnett, Jose Shorty Torres, Ronaldo Dye as well, who's, you know, and Ashley Grimshaw, who's a very, very, very talented fighter, and he was coaching at the weekend as well. He's a good coach too. Watching Izzeddine, it's sometimes you look at a guy and go, right, oh, he's a very good left hook, or good jab, good 1-2, or, you know, he's maybe this guy, oh, he comes out leg kicking. He does everything, extremely varied, sits on his shots a little bit too much at times. He gets off balance, but he throws these wild hooks. Again, a nice jab, lovely front kicks, high and low, nice head kicks as well. Again, fought Shorty Torres and got really badly beaten wrestling in that fight. You know, is that an issue for him, or is it just because he's fighting Shorty Torres? I suppose we'll find out. Ghemmouri on the other side of it then. Again, an unusual guy. He's this kind of front-leaning, two-hand stance. A little bit, funny enough, like kind of Caelan Loughran does a little bit, but Very odd, but it works for him. There's no doubt about it. He can throw nice kicks in that position. Sometimes kind of drops his hands low as well from the outside position, which is very, very unusual. When I look at both of these guys, I find it very hard to pick a winner, because I wonder, will kind of the straight up, I suppose, metronome Ghemmouri, will that style win, or will the variation and the wildness win? I'd usually be the one for picking the wildness, but I think I'm going to pick the metronomic style of Yanis Ghemmouri here. I just think he'll be maybe a little bit, or a touch too good defensively. I think he'll be happy enough to walk outside of a step as well, and not get caught up in what I've shortened to Izzy nowadays, Derbani. But it's going to be tough. A tough fight for both of them, I think. I don't have the betting odds out yet. I'll pull that up here now if we can, but I think it's going to be a fight that can be determined early by who sets their stall out, who can make their game plan work. Let's put it that way. I'm gonna stick with Ghemmouri though. That was my pick after doing the bit of analysis, and I think it's still going to be my pick here. Another fight that's going to be pretty hard to pick is Abbas Khan against Salah. Salah, Eddine, Hamli. Another fight at lightweight here. Khan, very interesting guy looking at him. 8-3 in his career. A lot of decisions. 6 of those fights have gone to decision. He's won 5 of them. His losses have been to pretty good guys. George Ade was one of them. Chad Griffiths, another one over in Brave. And then Jan Lias, who obviously we've seen in the UFC and other places as well. He's a good win. He's a few good wins. Omar Hussain, who's obviously we've seen in PFL as well. But he's won his last 2. Gone back to Brave after that fight in the PFL, and he's taking on 26-year-old 8-0. Salah Hamli, who again is making his PFL debut here. He fought over in that WOW promotion and in FCC and other places as well. A very, very interesting fighter, this Salah. Runs straight across the cage, double legs you, try to take you down. Looks very good on top. Great at taking the back, vicious ground and pound. Can on the other side of it then has a good jab, a good right hand, a good clinch. And he does that in all his fights. Every fight I watched, I spent an inordinate amount of time doing test study for this, I'll be honest. Every fight. I watched, 3, 4 fights, bits and pieces of them anyway, maybe not the whole fight, but that's the start of all of the fights. Jab, right hand, clinch, takedown. Every fight. Funnily enough, though, the bits and pieces where you do see his hands, if someone gets him off, I actually think his hands are pretty good. Maybe he needs to trust them a little bit more. And I'm talking about Abbas Khan here. I get good on the ground, but I don't think he's special on the ground like Salah is. He fought Omar El Dafawi, who was one of the top fighters for the last couple of years in PFL MENA. Gave him a real hard time in that fight. A real hard time in that fight. That was a couple of years ago. He actually won that fight. I wonder, if this is a kind of a grappler versus grappler fight, I wonder will the striking of Khan, who I think is a little bit better than Salah, will that be the winning of it? If Khan can keep the fight standing, can he win it? I think if the fight goes to the ground, I think it'll probably be Salah working out. To me, his wrestling looks a little bit better than Khan's. He initiates it a little bit better than Khan, and he is a little bit more successful with those double legs. He's a real athlete, a real good athlete. The pick is going to be Salah. But with a word of warning that if Khan can keep it standing, I actually think he can win that fight. Can. But we'll see. We'll see how that works out. Right. One of the, I suppose, the top matchups in this is Taha Bendaoud against Abdelrahman Alhaysat, both undefeated, 4-0 and 5-0. Both have had their opportunities, obviously, in the PFL. Taha won last year over in the Battle of the Giants fight. He fought Ismail Tariq. and had a very, very good win there via triangle choke. Again, undefeated. That made him 4-0, undefeated as an amateur too. And then Abdelrahman Alhaysat, he was due to fight in the finale last year, didn't end up happening, but he'd beat Abdullah Al-Khatani, who was due to be on this fight. I believe that fight is off. He'd beaten him last year. He beat Ahmed Tarak as well. A very, very talented guy, you know, so two very, very talented guys coming in here. Alhaysat, big power, hard leg kicks, and a real good athlete, you know. Remind you a little bit of Habib as well. He can wrestle, but, you know, more powerful and more, you know, more of a striker. Land all his power shots. Lands so many of them. And in Taha, you know, he kind of has this weird two-handed karate stance. We talked about him before, but he's a kind of a switch stance fighter, does get taken down an awful lot, you know, and that's probably where Alhaysat will win this fight, I would say. I think he's my favorite. Very green as well, still Taha, but looks like he could knock out lads. Very accurate when the fight gets into a rhythm. You know, he is yet to get a knockout in his career, but again, you just look at his picture here in Sherdog, and he, you know, you can see how good of an athlete he is. But I'm gonna go with the Jordan man here, the Cobra, Alhaysat, to win that one. I think the wrestling might be how he gets it done here. Very good at winning decisions as well over there. The next fight I want to talk about is Hussain Salem against Assem Ghanem. We mentioned Hussain earlier on as well. He's a guy who's fought a lot of the guys, not just in PFL MENA, but around the region as well. 18 fights into his career, 13-5, 12 inside the distance in his wins. Very, very good record there. You know, last time out, he fought over in one championship action. He beat Walter Cogliandro, who is, you know, a very talented European fighter who's been around for a long, long time. He's been in there with Derbani, who I mentioned earlier on as well. Close fight there, last split decision, but that was a good while ago. They actually fought twice, and it was a disqualification. He lost by the first time out, but you know, a guy, again, a real finisher here, going in against a guy who at 32, Ghanem, actually, he's aged in here, but he's a young guy, undefeated, 6-0 as a prospect, coming through. This is his first PFL MENA, undefeated as an amateur as well, I believe. And Ghanem, he is so you heard me just, if you haven't seen him fighting or anything, you heard me just talking, this 6-0 undefeated prospect. You're probably thinking, this guy, and you know, it's his first big step up. Probably thinking, this guy is, you know, beating all the guys in the regional scene and making it look easy. Anything but. This guy has shown great heart. He's still undefeated, but I don't know how, to be honest. He goes for everything and tires himself out. I think he's a better grappler than he is a striker, but he throws big bombs. He's a guy, look, green as grass again. He needs to mature, but he has so much talent. He gets so excited. He gets caught, but on the feet and on the ground. He just gets caught out in weird positions. But he's going in against a guy like Salem. You know, I was watching a couple of his fights and they called him a grappler, but we see a lot of striking by him. We don't see a whole lot of grappling in the fights I watched anyway. You know, he whips in his shots, but I actually like him as a counter striker. I think when he draws lads in and counters, he's good. Sneaky, powerful too. You know, big and tall. Not the most amazing takedown defense in the world. And I'll be honest, I have no idea how this fight is going to go. Really, really no idea. If you'd ask me who can maybe better control it, I would say Hussain Salem. If you'd ask me maybe who's the better athlete and who could cause ructions, let's put it that way, I would say Assem Ghanem. But again, take your choice. If Assem Ghanem can have gotten rid of a bit of that greenness, if he is putting it together a little bit better, I think he can win this fight and he can win lots of fights. But has he? That is the question I think we would probably be asking with this guy for a while. I don't know. I'm not SNB gym here. It's called. I'm not sure about that side of it. What kind of training he's getting? What kind of what kind of advice he's getting, to put it there. Now there are some guys fighting out of that gym. I'm looking here. Ahmed Tarak is out of that gym, who's a good fighter, and a few more as well. So I suppose we'll see. We'll see. I'll go with him. Do you know what? I'll go with him to win it. Couple more fights I want to mention as well. Akram Nasri against Islam Reda. Islam Reda, a guy, again, who has a lot of experience against the guy who doesn't. And this is kind of a trend on this card, but it was a trend last year as well. I was a tad worried about it last year, but it worked out great. So I have no problem with it again. This year, Nasri is 3-0, sorry. All finishes, all submissions so far in his career. And Reda, again, a submission guy as well. 12 wins, 8 submission wins. He's 31 years of age now, but at the prime of his career, won his last 6 in a row. I think it was an injury put him out of last year as well, wasn't it? And he looked so good last year. He beat Adam Meskini and Marouane Bendaoud in the playoffs. He's only lost to Abdullah Al-Katani. Obviously, he was a very, very good fighter as well, and he has, some very good wins. Ahmed Sami he beat. In his early days, he beat Wilson Varela as well over in Hex MMA. And as I said, those last 2 wins as well were very, very good. Reda, they call him the Egyptian zombie, and with good reason. He's a grappler, but he dives in for double legs, throws big head kicks, an old school mad grappler I've written here in my notes. He'll do anything to force a scramble and get it down. Throws double hammer fist from the guard, finds himself on the bottom lots as well. Lots of different submissions. He's a good few arm bars in his record. And in Nasri as well, he's also a grappler, as I said, a lot of submissions, but very fast on the feet with his feet. Moves like a flyweight. Only 3 fights early enough in his career, but his striking also looks good. Again, a lot of early finishes, not a whole lot of tape on him, but the striking, I think, does look good. And I wonder if he could keep the fight in the feet here against Reda, would that be good for him? But he's very good at setting up takedowns and dipping under. Looks natural on the ground. A great passer while still remaining controlled. Good side control as well, which is unusual in today's game. But a great ride and great taking the back as well. I wonder, will he want to play that game against Reda? I might be going for the underdog here. I might go for Nasri at 3-0. We'll be interested to see when the prices come out here. Reda is the guy I suppose a lot of people will be picking, but I think Nasri is, I don't know, he's not as green as someone you'd expect to be at this stage of their career. He does things with a coolness and, I mentioned the word controlled earlier on. He's a very controlled fighter in all areas. Now, this is a massive step up. Make no mistake about it whatsoever. A massive, massive step up. He's never fought in a promotion I've heard of before, but he certainly looked good doing it. He certainly looked good, but a very interesting fight. A very, very interesting fight there as well. We have the aforementioned George Jade as well. And the last couple of fights I want to talk about here as well. He's fighting Mohammed Fahmi, who, again, very similar matchup to the last one. George Jade 10-5. Fahmi is 4-0 in his career. We know George Jade now obviously lost to Mohammadseifi last year, but was having a great year before. I fought and beat Abbas Khan and Omar Ragouni as well. He had been over in Brave and lost to Ali Sanatani and a couple more as well. But he's kind of a streaky guy. Goes and runs, loses a couple. Goes and runs, loses a couple. A brilliant, brilliant striker. Probably should have more knockouts than the 4 of his 10 wins in his career. And his opponent, again, 3 finishes in his first 4 fights. Fought in one championship once, had a good win over there, and now he's coming over obviously to the PFL. He's a southpaw, really good in the scrambles, good takedowns himself. Maybe not the best takedown defense in the world, but I don't think Aid will be trying to take him down. Aid is a real top striker. He has good takedown defense up until a point, and great movement on the feet. Do you know what the key to this fight is? How Aid can bounce back, or how Mohammed Fahmi can look at that last fight, do what Mohammadseifi did to him. And what did Mohammadseifi do to him? He outconfidenced him in a way. He just outfought him, outstruck him, was first, everything, was just the cleaner, crisper guy. Be tough to do for someone so young in their career who's never fought to this level before. So I'm going to pick George Aid in this one, but if Aid loses this fight, it's going to be a tough road back. I know this is a knockout tournament, but you get what I mean. I'll stick with him because I do believe he's a very, very good fighter. But there's that one. And the last fight I want to touch on is Souhil Tahri against Salem. Just quickly before that, there are another couple of fights on this as well. Young guys, Ahmed against Hasim Elmnar. Both very, very young in their careers. Yusuf Hassani and Nidar Jafel as well is an interesting one. Again, two guys pretty young in their career, and there's also an amateur fight on it. We've seen a couple of them. Abdul Aziz bin Omar and Faraz Hamandi. So I'm interested to see that. But Tahri, you know, a guy I've probably mentioned in this show 3 or 4 times so far. And it's crazy to think his record is 7-6-1, you know, for such a talented guy at 33 years of age. But like when you're in there with John Mitchell, Mohammadseifi, Mohamed Jaha, Bruno Carvalho, you know, even early in his career, you know, losing fights like that, it's going to happen. You know, he has some good wins throughout his career. Amir Amir, I suppose, the standout of those, and, you know, a good finisher as well. 6 finishes in the 7 wins. He's coming up against a guy who's 5-0 with a lot of submissions. You know, very, very athletic looking guy who had he had a no contest in his first PFL fight and was obviously, as I said, undefeated coming in to that. Watching a bit of him, he's a big barreler of a wrestler, you know, and big overhand to the takedown, great submissions. You know, got a triangle, obviously, in that fight that was overturned. Nearly got Norma Plata in as well. And, you know, Tahri, the other side, he's a technical striker, good jab, good high kicks, good at adjusting between attacks. He has good takedown defense and he throws up submissions when he does get taken down, but he's going to need it here. I think Salem is... I think he's probably going to win this fight. I think he's probably going to be one of the younger guys who beats one of the older guys again. And I think it's a tough enough matchup for Tahri. As good as and all as Tahri is, I think the big barreler of a wrestler is just going to be too much for him. You know, we saw in the John Mitchell fight, obviously, you know, Mitchell took him down and it was an issue. Mohammadseifi is similar enough type of shape, I suppose, to Abdul Saleem. Going to be an issue here. Going to be an issue. So that is it. That is the PFL MENA preview for 2025 for the first card. Very, very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing who emerges and who goes to the next card. So for today, that is it. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Sheehan for SureDog.com, and I'll see you all next time.